Dr. Jazz.
Super. Thanks for finding the time. Appreciate it.
Of course. Happy to do this.
I'll speak with both of you, Jasons. I really kind of want to do it separately. I don't know why, just to talk about each of you, your careers separately as well, even though you have a new album coming out, kind of, so together. Um, but yeah, I want to start with Sanctuary. Actually, I remember hearing it for the first time like a couple of years ago when United came out. I don't know, somehow I got a hold of that record and I really loved it. And this is kind of a continuation of this story, the new one. And I really love Jason's Palmer's edition here as well. Like he's man, it's like a cream on the cake. Like, what's the story behind the new album? And
Yeah, of course. So, well, first off, it's great to be chatting with you. Um, and I'm glad that you got a copy of United, which is the first project. Jason Yaeger, great pianist and longtime friend of mine, that we recorded together. And our history goes way back because we actually grew up in the towns right next to each other.
oh, really? Oh, okay, I didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah, we both grew up in towns in Massachusetts, and we're about the same age, and kind of grew up in similar circles, going to jazz jams when we were in high school, and yeah, so we've known each other for many, many years through performing and gigs, and then we had through that we started to have a lot of material and similar concepts of compositional aesthetics was very similar, but United, we both brought our individual compositions and then kind of reinterpreted those, and then also had some incredible special guests on United, just like our new album.
Yeah.
Like George Garzone was on that album, and Jason Palmer, as you mentioned. And so United was kind of, so this was the previous one, kind of a culmination of all those years of collaborations and kind of our vision of combining and fusing a lot of different musical traditions together, things that we've loved, into a kind of a contemporary jazz album. And then the next album, which is Sanctuary, that just came out, was it last month, on Sunnyside Records. So that's our newest one. And this was a little bit more of an undertaking because, like the last one, we brought our own material together and kind of co-arranged it. But on this one, we co-wrote all the material. And
Okay.
so it's,
Interesting.
with the exception of a Wayne Shorter piece that we recorded, which was very fitting in tribute of his passing. We both love that song, Lost by Wayne Shorter. It's our favorite. But, and then also we did a Chopin piece because we both, well, we could talk more about that. But so for the most part, the album is music that we wrote together. Almost, I think it's been about 6 years that we've been working on all this material because so many things were happening in the world that we
Sure.
felt like there was stories and a lot of emotions and things happening between the pandemic and all the plights around the world. Were just, both Jason and I, we wanted to have an album of co-written material, but it was like some of the stories were starting to evolve from our feelings around of what's happening around the world and putting that into music. But it was very eye-opening to co-write. We knew that we both had a similar aesthetic as far as as far as composing went. So it was just great to,
What was the
you know,
process? How did you do that? I mean,
yeah,
did you write like 4 bars and he did, or what was the?
I know it, yeah, everyone's writing process is slightly different. So then you have two people's writing processes. It gets interesting. So there were some songs where he had written, like the song Ephemery, for example. He had written
Mhm.
this beautiful kind of bass or bottom layer texture on the piano, and I then wrote a melody on top of it. There were other songs where he had a full concept of an A part, and I instantly kind of like, oh, I think I know where the B can go.
Okay.
And then there were other ones where we got together during breaks. We're both teachers at Berkeley. Piano. He's in the piano department. I'm in the strings department, and so we would just find little hours here and there, as we were starting to craft some of the newer material, and we would write together, stream of consciousness, and then record ideas we really liked. Yeah, but since a decent chunk of it was starting to be formed during the pandemic, and he was in New York, that was a lot of like, we would Zoom to talk about things. We would send each other files. We would send each other reference recordings. And then once we got together, we would polish it out and kind of hone them.
Have you ever done that before, like co-writing with someone, or?
I've done
you did? Okay.
some co-writing before. Actually, I grew up co-writing with my dad, who's
really?
also a musician. So yeah, so that process wasn't completely foreign to me. But I would say the majority of my writing has been just by myself.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
But I really enjoy it. I really enjoy it. When you have somebody with a similar vision and aesthetic, it is kind of like two heads are better than one in a way, because you do get a new sound on top of it, right?
Yeah.
And we push each other into different directions that create something fresh. And so even with a similar vision of the kind of things that, like where we want to take the song and the kind of like the interests and passions and the kind of genres we love and are trying to mix in, I'll still get surprised by the ideas he has, and vice versa, and it just creates, I think, a kind of a newer sound, which is fun.
No, it's interesting. Like if I wrote now 8 bars and I sent it out to 30 musicians to write a B part, I think everyone would. It would be completely different, even though they would probably follow what I wrote. But still, like it's so interesting that
Yeah, and you gotta trust the other musician too, and you have to let go of some ideas, because we've been there where you write a song and somebody has a suggestion, you're like, no, it's set in stone, like
exactly.
I know exactly how it should be. So yeah, there's just that trust, and the I think the history that we have together, that we know that we could trust, like where the song would go, and then we would evolve it from there and give suggestions on each other's parts, and then some sections would be co-written. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think it really depends on the other musician,
Sure.
for the other composer, if you're going to co-write.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I've never tried it. I have to do that one day. It sounds
Yeah.
intriguing, actually, but yeah.
It pushes
cool.
songs into
Yeah.
different territories, for sure.
Definitely. I wanted to ask you about violin. I mean, it's still obviously, I remember seeing Stefan Grappelli in mid-90s. He came to Slovenia, to my hometown, and obviously, I was blown away. And being a guitarist, I checked out the stuff with Django and all the fusion violin players later, Jean-Luc Ponty and all these guys. And why the violin for you, and especially into jazz and improvisation? How did you enter that world?
Yeah, that's always an interesting one, because if I was a sax player, it would be a no-brainer, right?
Yeah.
There's you mentioned saxophone, and the list of greats that you can reference, it's just all right there. And yes, there are a growing number of violinists, and we're discovering some new people, and but it's very underrepresented in the jazz world, for sure. It's underrepresented for various reasons, but I did get to see Stefan Grappelli perform one of his last tours of the U.S. And I was about 11 years old, so that was one moment that was pretty pivotal, was to see a jazz violinist live at that level. Somebody that my dad had shown me recordings of, and then to see it live was pretty incredible. And growing up in a musical family, my dad plays violin, guitar, a lot of string instruments, right? Mandolin. So violin was laying around the house. My dad wanted me to play violin, and I was already kind of gravitating towards it. So I started around 5. I did classical as well. Actually, continued classical through conservatory, but I loved improvisation, and my dad encouraged it early on. My dad's fascinated by it and is an improviser himself, and so I think he really encouraged it. And to me, like composing and improvisation were kind of part of the same world.
Yeah.
And when I was about 11, there was like a little, even kind of around that time I saw Stefan Grappelli. I was also kind of wrestling with, like, I knew I loved music, but was violin the instrument for me? Because I was also starting to, around 11, 12, 13, listen to a lot of saxophone and hear and other jazz musicians, and it's like, is violin the instrument for it? And so I was playing guitar. Actually, I started
Really?
learning guitar, and within a week or two, I was starting to compose. And so I had that thing in me that was kind of this innate, like, fearlessness to try things, experiment, and to compose. I feel like I had a knack for that, and that was then encouraged by my dad. So kind of through composing, and then starting to really get into this idea of, oh, these people are composing on the spot. That's to me what I saw as improv, and that just blew my mind, and that kind of stream of consciousness really excited me. And so I did listen to a lot of saxophone players, naturally, of course, right? The language of jazz, was like really centered around these early saxophone players. And what excited me was that I wasn't hearing a lot of jazz violinists. Of course, I saw Stefan Grappelli. I knew Stefan Grappelli was kind of one of the legends of the violin, but I was really inspired by Charlie Parker, and my brother was studying saxophone, and his teacher gave him a best of or greatest hits Charlie Parker album, and I just got obsessed with that around about 15 years old. And I was like, I'm not hearing a lot of violinists like playing kind of Charlie Parker language, that era, the bebop language. So I really got obsessed with it, and excited that because you mentioned it was underrepresented, that actually became something that excited me. Was like, oh, I think I could make a mark as a violinist. I don't think there's as many out there. So that kind of really kind of gave me extra drive to try to make violin a jazz instrument. And again, there are others doing it, and I've discovered so many more over the years. But it was something that's always excited me to like, oh, there's so much you can do. And the more I discovered about the violin and saxophone players, and actually violin is a great jazz instrument, it turns out, because there's a lot of I know it's very singable, it's very lyrical. You can do you can mimic the phrasing of a saxophone, like just like the breathing. And so I just got fascinated at trying to find my own voice on the instrument and see how I can really bring it into the jazz world more and more. But it definitely started through obsessing over saxophone players.
Interesting. Yeah, it's all of us the same, right? I'm the
Yep.
same. I was like, the horn, that's like, I mean, obviously you researched on your own instrument, but
Mm-hmm.
it's just the saxophone. It's something. And jazz, that's like, man, yeah. Did you also do like go into the, bluegrass and Americana music? Like, did you check those things out?
Yes,
Like,
yes. So that's definitely something that is a big part of my upbringing. I would say the kind of the three pillars would be the classical music, jazz, and then kind of American fiddle music.
yeah, exactly.
I was doing fiddle competitions because
Oh,
that was
really? Oh, wow.
that's
Okay.
actually my dad's main world, but he also loved swing, and he loved Django and Grappelli, which that music kind of crosses over
Yeah.
in the world of like bluegrass. People tend to like that. It's almost like a fusion of bluegrass and jazz together. If you listen to Django and Stefan Grappelli, just from the aesthetic and the instrumentation. So yeah, that was another thing that's there. And on the album we did a song Colorado, and that to me has some definite kind of roots elements, not like a direct bluegrass link, but kind of Americana,
Mm-hmm.
um, kind of a little bit of a kind of old time. I don't know. It's hard to describe exactly because it doesn't fit into like a sit box, but I feel it feels very kind of like rooted in that some of those fiddle traditions in a bit. But there's other projects that I have which have been more directly
Yeah, I know. Yeah, yeah,
fusing jazz with like
yeah.
bluegrass, kind of like Bela
That's what I'm
Fleck would
asking.
do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I love those guys. Sam Bush and Bela Fleck and Edgar Meyer,
Yep.
and Mark O'Connor is the violinist. I think
Mark
it's
Connor. Yep.
yeah.
And I've had a lot of
Brilliant band.
opportunities to cross paths. Being a violinist, I've had a lot of opportunities to cross paths with some great players who are in that world for sure.
Yeah. When did you start band leading actually? Like
Um, let's see. When I was in high school,
already?
I had a group with my dad and some local musicians called the Hot Club of Marlboro. So I was kind of band leading that a little bit. So yeah, even in high school, and I also had a kind of a jazz rock band, kind of Matthews-esque.
Oh
They
yeah.
had the violin player, kind of
Yeah.
jam
Yeah.
bandy. I also had one of those with my friends that I was band leading and writing music for. And so that was in high school. So yeah, it was like starting then, but then like it continued to evolve. And after being a side person playing violin with a great guitar player, John Jorgenson,
Yeah, I
who's
wanted to
more,
ask you about that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I did that gig for about 10 years,
Wow.
and kind of towards the like 5, 6 years in to touring with that, I was starting to do a lot more of my own projects when I had the free time. And then that once I was kind of like ready to phase out into my own projects, I had already built some momentum and started some of my other projects like Rhythm Future Quartet,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then the project with Jason Yaeger.
Did it come natural for you, or even now, like how have you evolved as a band leader? If you look back
Oh,
now, I mean, is it really
it's
easy
a
for you, or when
uh,
you talk now, it seems like really like yeah, yeah, it's.
it's something you work on and
Yeah.
you grow. I mean, of course, being like a front person and having to give a compelling show and present it is always something that we're working on, and we're always trying to improve. I don't think I was ever, well, I wouldn't say I was not ever nervous to do it, but I think since I did it in high school, I
Mm.
got some of the nerves out, and it's something that is just improved and evolved over time. So less nervous, but more just honing it and trying to be able to tell just enough of a story of what the song's about, especially when we're talking about instrumental music.
Yeah.
You don't have the lyric content for people to listen on. So for us instrumental composers, I mean, I think there are some artists like I saw a Brad Meldau show, and I don't think he said a word, but nobody cared, right? And I mean, he was just like, you're just in that world. Um, and so sometimes like you don't need to say anything. The music speaks for itself. And then other times you're but like a performing arts center where they want a little context of it. And so really it's situational. And for times where I'm really trying to give more context for the listeners. Yeah. And I think Jason Yeager is great at that
Mm.
as well. So we kind of share that role if we're doing our gigs together, just giving some context of like
Yeah,
where
it's
the
nice.
song
Yeah.
came
Yeah.
from and
Yeah.
what like one way they could imagine it as they do it, because visualization, imagination, and kind of the story we try to tell is a big part of our music. It's never just, oh, here's a song, it's cool but it's meaningless. We try not to write those types of songs, but some people also have want to create their own stories with instrumental music too. So it's kind of this balance of not giving too much information so that they can still fill in some of the gaps and create their own story of how they are interpreting it.
Mm.
One person's sad song could be a happy song, or it's kind of interesting how that works out. But I'd say most of the time people like to have at least something to latch on to
Yeah. Yeah.
that gives, like, here's why we named it this, or here's the general vibe. Yeah.
It's nice
So
to connect to the audience in that way. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, I love that's something that I've always enjoyed, was performing for other people. And just feeding off the crowd's energy. And like when I saw Stefan Grappelli play, everyone was at the edge of their seat. He's beaming. It's just, even when he's playing a heart-wrenching ballad, it's like you're smiling just because
Mm.
you're just like, wow, music's amazing. This is incredible. This is it's so moving. And so those are the kind of musicians, the musicians that have always hit me. And I think most people, right? Most
Oh yeah,
people,
sure.
the feelings that are evoked and the passion and being able to share that has always been something that's been super important to me.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. No, it's nice. I saw Pat Metini show like recently in Europe, a solo tour he did, and he talked really a lot, about his tunes. And I mean, I've
Yeah.
known his playing for such a long time, but still, it was nice to hear him talk, and the audience was like, man, listening to these stories and stuff. So it's yeah, I mean, I think we all appreciate it when
Hmm.
musicians do that. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a nice
definitely.
thing. How did you meet John Jorgensen? I mean, I know him from the Helicasters, that band he had.
Yeah.
I love that band, and he's a monster guitar player. Like, what's your story with him? Because you were really
Yeah.
young, right, when you started actually playing with him, or
I think I was about 20, maybe 20.
well,
Yeah. Yeah. So John Jorgensen, kind of a lot of guitar players, he's like one of their guitar heroes from the different collaborations. He even
yeah,
did a stint with Elton John and
I
was,
didn't know that. Like,
yeah, a big Nashville and California session player.
yeah.
He's been on so many records and but kind of later in his career, like he's always been into Django and kind of post like after he left the Elton John band and he's doing all these sessions, he's like, it's finally time to kind of like do a band for me. And what he wanted to do was like really like a Django meets world music meets his original voice because he writes a lot and arranges a lot and they're fantastic fantastic original songs.
Mm,
And I was really starting to get more tied in. I mean, I know I was not that old, but I was, um, I was really starting to meet more people in the Django scene. And I was very lucky. There's a camp called Django in June,
not
which
really.
is,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, a summer camp every June that happened about, 40 minutes from where I grew up. And I started to go to that, and I started to meet all these great players who'd come out from Europe, um, and really just start to learn the tradition um, and I kind of dove into that style. I knew that was going to be a great entry point as a violin player, and I always had this grand vision of either being a side person or my own band that kind of combined all my favorite things, including bebop and contemporary jazz into a Django setting, which is what I ended up doing later with Rhythm Future Quartet.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, um, I was meeting some incredible musicians from Europe, including the Robin Nolan trio. Robin Nolan's another great guitar player in this world who's a really good friend of John's. And I met him and we hit it off and he invited me up. This is when I was maybe 19 to play at the Montreal Jazz Festival.
Mm,
And that was really pivotal because it kind of proved to me like I can do this. And it was just an amazing opportunity to play at a legendary festival, and it went really well. And so when John Jorgensen was looking for a new violinist, so he had started his group and started to get some momentum, and the band had recorded, I think maybe one or two albums already, but their violin player had to leave. And I mean the it was kind of serendipitous the timing of it all because when the violin player was leaving, he started to ask around, and who he asked were people in the Django scene who I was starting to meet,
mm,
and they're like, oh, and like because John was like, I want like more of a younger player, up and comer, and so a lot of people pointed in my direction through those connections, and he emailed me. He's like, hey, would you want to audition for this? And I was like, this, of course. I just got to finish school first. So I did on a winter break. I started to play with him and auditioned, and it went really well. I worked my butt off on all the material, which was really difficult. But John also comes from classical, or at least loves classical music, and integrates some classical elements. And so the classical edge from playing many years of that and continuing that through conservatory was super helpful, as well as the improv and the Django aesthetic. So I kind of had the perfect blend that he was looking for. And I was one semester away from graduating, and I did graduate. I was very happy. There was this time where he's like, well, you just gotta, I don't know. He wanted me to graduate, but he also wanted a band member, and he had all these gigs coming up. So I was very lucky that I was able to do some. And the previous violinist agreed on some of the other ones that I couldn't do until I graduated. And it was, like I said, it was like serendipitous to like right out of school be
Yeah, it's
playing.
amazing.
It was like
Yeah.
200 dates a year with John. So that to me is what I
Crazy,
consider
man.
my
Wow.
master's degree.
How was that like? I mean, to play really like 200 gigs or 150?
Yeah,
I
all
mean,
around the world. I mean, it was
wow.
incredible. That's all I wanted to do. Like when I graduated, I just wanted to play. I just wanted to be touring, and you know,
Was it hard on the road in the beginning or like,
no,
huh? Oh, okay.
I loved it. I loved it. And they're all the bands. They're all great guys, and they were older. Obviously, I was only 20, um, so I just learned so much from them, and yeah, it was just a great musical and personal learning experience, and just observing, like a master was so important for when I, came back to band leading and like in a serious way, not the high school days,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
of band leading, like a more serious band where I was trying to uh, kind of follow a similar arc that John had done with performing arts centers, festivals, and building that up. And yeah, I learned so much, and we're still good friends. I think the last time I played with him was a couple years ago. Um, we kind of joined together on a festival, which was really fun.
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah, it's so important you got a chance to do that. Just to tour, because many young musicians don't get a chance to do that, and that's so important. Yeah, it's
Yes.
privilege.
Yeah.
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 But you also started teaching very early. You mentioned you're at the Berkeley as a teacher, right? How did that happen? And being a teacher, what does that mean for you and your approach
Mm.
to that actually?
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things that we were doing a lot on the road was we would do workshops as well. We would go somewhere, maybe do a workshop with the regional school. And so that was one of my first ways of seeing, like John was a great educator as well. So just seeing that, oh, there's this balance of you can teach and play. And that
Yeah,
just started to get in my head of like, oh, that's the balance I want. And so I just started to take, um, teaching a little more serious, and the craft and learning from other great teachers. And so I was trying to take lessons with different people and just see how their approach to teaching was, and just learning as much as I can. And taking on some private students as well was a great way to just, put my foot in the door. But yeah, doing those workshops with John was great on the road. And I started to teach at some small camps as well. So that was a great opportunity to, like the one I mentioned, Django in June. I was a student, then I eventually started teaching there, and yeah, just started to really hone it, and also find a love for it.
yeah,
I knew I always wanted the balance of performing and teaching, but I also was really finding a love for teaching and sparking that joy in young students. And I got an opportunity around when I was about, let's see, I think I was like 25 maybe. Um, I was living in Boston at the time, so touring with Jorgenson, but I'm living in Boston, so I was getting to know a lot of Berkeley professors, playing local gigs, and just being on the scene here. And so I was on the radar of the string department, and
okay.
they needed someone to teach their summer program, and I was around, and so that was kind of like a trial period for them and me to see how that would go. It's a little more. It was like the 5 week program, which is high school students who might be going to Berkeley, or so that was just a great way for them to try me out, because I was on the younger side, and for me to experiment and get my foot in the door there, and it went really well. And so that relationship continued, and then kind of an opening in the string department came, and yeah, I've been there for now 14 years,
Already? Oh wow, man.
something like that.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's a long time. Jeez. Okay,
yeah, yep,
that's amazing.
yep,
You're really young when you started then, like 14 to 10. Wow. Okay, incredible, fantastic.
yeah,
Yeah.
yep.
Uh, I wanted to ask you, Jason, also. Your biography says one of the names popped out was Stevie Wonder, and I want to ask you where and why. How did that happen? I mean, was probably a gig, I guess, or something. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, it
Like,
was a gig, you know how bios go, you
yeah,
know.
yeah, but still, I love these always.
I know.
There's an interesting story behind it.
It is. It is. Yeah. So, yeah, Stevie Wonder was playing. He was doing the Songs in the Key of Life
Hmm.
tour, which was going to have a string section, um, and they were playing the TD Garden in Boston, and I
Oh, beautiful.
got to get on that gig, and it was just incredible to
Really?
play those arrangements. And Stevie was at the rehearsal and giving us like tips like on these certain parts. He's like, not like that, more like beta, beta, beta,
Oh,
beta.
really? Oh,
And
wow,
we're
that's
just like,
amazing.
oh wow, we're getting like rehearsal notes from the legend. And so that was amazing. Yeah, so it was like big one time thing, but it was definitely an incredible experience, and yeah, great to share the stage.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. What's on the schedule for you for the upcoming months, weeks, tour-wise? I mean, any plans of coming to Europe or well, I mean, different
Yeah,
questions here, but
yeah, yeah. So I've been to Europe a number of times. I don't have any plans right now. Right now, I have a 3-year-old, so
okay.
my extensive
I
travels
know where you
are
are. Okay, we have a
yeah, yeah.
two-year-old, so
Yes, yes, yeah. So
I hear you.
I, we have a situation where I am traveling a bit and still taking like little weekend tours, but that's usually around the States at this point with the occasional festival here and there that might put me overseas. But sometimes when you go overseas, it has to be stretched out longer,
Yeah.
and just not at that point right now where I'm gonna do those like 1, 2, 3 weeks right now. So putting any of those on hold, I had an opportunity to go to Italy last year, but they needed me there 3 weeks. And I was like, of course I want to do that, but no, it's just not the right time. So just putting some of those on the back burner. I like I said, I love traveling. I know those opportunities will come back. So I'm doing doing a lot of things, being around Boston and this New England's got a lot of places you can play. You can hop around, and within an hour you got a whole new market and a whole new place. So there's a lot of places that I play, especially having a few different projects like the one with Jason Yaeger. I also have another one with a great piano player where we do more Oscar Peterson and
Oh,
Stefan
really?
Grappelli.
Oh, wow, I have to check it out.
Yeah, I released another album earlier this year that was a tribute to Grappelli and Oscar Peterson,
Oh,
who collaborated many
yeah.
many years. So that's a little more on the swing side of things, and then Rhythm Future Quartet is fairly busy. We're heading out in January. We have a tour in California, for example, and yeah. So right now, between teaching and like more mini tours, uh, you know, I mostly stay within the U.S. currently, and also do the dad thing.
Yeah, yeah. Are you
Yeah.
working on some new stuff as well as a band leader? I mean, like under your only on your name? Are you considering that as well, or?
Mm. Yeah. So there's always stuff that is on the back burner.
Yeah, yeah,
So this year releasing 2 albums, that
yeah.
was
It's a
like
lot.
a
Yeah,
big, that was like a lot of stuff over the past years of like getting together.
yeah, yeah.
I want to work towards another Rhythm Future Quartet album. I want to. I have a set of solo violin pieces
Oh, wow,
that
beautiful.
I wanna work towards and finishing and recording. Um, yeah, and I do have a lot of songs kind of half finished, a quarter finished that I'm still trying to figure out what form they'll take, whether I do more of like a solo project where I
Yeah.
play a bunch of instruments. Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out what that next step is, but releasing these last two
Yeah,
now
first
we're just kind of
parodies.
doing a lot of shows off those albums. Like we just played Birdland
Oh, really? Oh,
in New
fantastic.
York, which was a lot of fun. And
Beautiful.
so, and we're Jason and I are playing the Carnegie Hall next year. It's the smaller one, but it's still Carnegie Hall. So we're thrilled about that. So got some fun stuff on the horizon.
Sounds exciting.
Yeah,
Fantastic, man.
staying
Beautiful.
busy.
Same busy. Super. Um, I'll let you go to be with the 3-year-old. No,
Yeah, I
but
know,
King,
right?
no, man, thanks for finding the time. Appreciate it. It
Of
was nice to hear you
course,
talk about
yeah.
it. And
Yeah, I
if
really
you're ever in
appreciate you.
Europe, drop me a line.
Yeah, yeah. Gotta get out. What you say you're in
I'm in Slovenia.
Slovenia?
I'm like two
Okay.
hours south of Vienna, just to you got an idea. Like I'm
Well,
between.
Vienna's on my bucket list of places to go. So
Oh, oh, well.
if I get there, I'll have to make the trip down there too.
Oh yeah, definitely. We're the wine country, so if
Mm.
you like wine, yeah, yeah, that's the place. But yeah,
Okay. I'll be
fantastic.
there next week.
Next week, yeah, like no, but I'll drop
Yeah,
you a line when this is out. I mean, I'll send you a link when this is out, and we can then share it and everything. So
absolutely. All right. Thank you so much. Really
you too,
appreciate it.
you too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dr. Jazz.